I'm joined today by John Athayde, Rails developer, designer, speaker, and author. He runs a product design and branding consultancy called Meticulous and lives on a small permaculture farm called Sfumato outside Charlottesville, Virginia. He'll be delivering his talk, Learning from Permaculture, Sustainable Software Development at Blue Ridge Ruby this spring. John, thanks for taking some time to chat.
Thanks for having me.
You and I have both studied permaculture, but you've done a lot more practice of it, I'm sure. I often struggle when I'm trying to explain permaculture to people for the first time. How do you end up explaining it?
So it's a design philosophy. A gentleman named Bill Mollison kind of looked at how tribal and indigenous people all over the world interacted with nature at the base level, and compared that to where industrial agriculture in the 20th century really had gone, which was high input, extractive, brittle, unsustainable, anything along those lines, right? And in doing so, kind of made a design science of how we approach not only land management, sustainability, but also culture and entire communities, as well as looking at you can apply permaculture principles to organizations and all sorts of things along those lines. And so we're actually going to take it and apply it to software and the craziness that is the software industry right now.
Yeah, that's cool. As someone who has an interdisciplinary studies degree, it feels very natural to me to apply the perspective and wisdom of one discipline or area of study to the practice of another, to look for like the analogies or the commonalities and overlaps between them. But I'm curious for you, what is the potential value or benefit in connecting something like permaculture to something like software development?
I always like to take anything and if I can rotate the camera proverbially. So if when we're looking at this, you're seeing certain things and you because you have a certain angle on it. And if you can turn that 90 degrees, all of a sudden you may understand interactions between things that you didn't before. And for me, I also feel, and I'm sure this is, kind of where you're coming from too. With, I went to architecture school and I do design and I do programming, and you've got a similar kind of like, touching all these different creative outlets that a weird thing over here suddenly applies to this thing here.
Yeah.
And that connection is not, if for either a person in a silo of either one of those may never have seen that.
Yes.
So I'm all excited to see how these things can interact and influence, just in the sense of architecture to user experience is a great one, right? So, when I'm talking about a piece of software, I'm still interacting with it in a way that I would interact with a building and walking through a space. And so wayfinding, clear flows, being able to know my mental model of where I am. Like, is it easy to have like the floor plan in my head, or do I get lost? Mm-hmm. All these things that happen in the real, tangible, touchable world, we do in software as well. And so there's a lot of these things where these influences can actually help us make better tools or better software. And also the things I think about in software, all of a sudden I can apply, what happens when I apply Agile or just in time to the farm? What kind of changes happen there? And there have been some people that have done that unintentionally, coming at it from different angles. With Mark Shepard's a great guy. He has one principle called STUN, which is sheer total utter neglect. And so when he plants orchards and trees and stuff, he just plants it and whatever survives.
Yeah,
that's one way to do it. But okay. Now, what does that influence? How do I think about things? I obviously don't want to be wasteful, but I don't want to do that with animals. Definitely, that feels weird.
Yeah.
But with trees or with okay, well that didn't work there. Why didn't it work there? Maybe and that's often with plants. It's not that the plant was wrong. It was just the plant was in the wrong place. Like 20 feet that way, it would have been great. Yeah. And here it's barely surviving. So. All that stuff, when I think of and then you can see commonalities in other things in life, in the way you work in your house, and then also just the way you interact in your company and things of that nature.
Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, that principle can apply to like when business owners are trying things, like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, and other people can be up in arms about that process, thinking like, why are you you're trying all these things and it looks really messy, like. You're not being precise, but that's part of it. Is sometimes you don't know what's going to work, and you find out by trying a bunch of things, as long as it doesn't cause bad outcomes. And for hopefully for ideas. You don't do that to people, like moving people into positions and just seeing if it works for them or not. But you might try an idea, because ideas like don't, they're not going to feel bad if they don't work or something.
And mixing those edges together, right? The
Yeah.
edge, like if you think about why do we always see deer at the edge of the forest? Because that's where the most food is,
The
candidly.
edge
I
is
mean,
where
like
the
that.
action is.
Right. And so if you think about, when you have these two different ecosystems, of maybe engineering product and coming together, or engineering product and design all coming together, like what happens at that edge is typically richer than what can happen deep into the silo.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of my favorites. I always remember that from my permaculture training or whatever. The edge is where the action is, and I've thought about
Yeah.
that in regard to being a designer developer, because there's so much action at the intersection, at that spot. Sometimes it is drama. Sometimes it is like chaos, but it's kind of like where the action is too. Like it's where
Right.
a lot of synthesis happens. Do you have any examples of permaculture principles and how they can be applied when designing human habitats, and then also how we might apply that same concept in designing software?
Yeah, there's two good ones that really stand out. One of them is designing from patterns to details. And so we look at the overall property. We look at all sorts of things with climate, the ecosystems that are there, the water flows that are there, where access is needed. We look at very high level at that point, and then we start working our way down with those layers. And then you're going to start talking about the kinds of use. Like there's certain parts of that overall property that you're going to go to once a year. And we call those like zone 4, zone 5. There's zones radiating out from like the core of the property, or the home, or the barn, the office, whatever. And then as you get a lot more detail and activity happening, looking at the patterns and time studies are a great one with this, right? So if I need to go water the chickens, and I need to go and put hay in the feeders, and I need to go and do all these things, what's the most efficient route I can take to do that? So I could go get the feed, go to the chickens, go back to the barn, get the hay, go out to the goats, come back to the barn, or I could figure out this way where it's like, oh, okay, I'm going to start here, take care of these things, carry everything with me, and come back, and it's one big loop, and I'm done.
Yeah.
And that becomes half the time.
Right.
And so it's doing things smartly, and that kind of loop is important. But again,
That reminds me of flows, like user flows,
Yeah.
when designing interfaces.
like if you think about
go
CRUD,
over, create this
Right,
yeah,
and then
create
come
that
back.
record, then go back, and then go over and create this one, then come back. Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
hates that so much, right?
Yeah.
And but yet we it's one of those common patterns we see where,
Yeah.
well, from a spec perspective, we didn't really have good insight into how someone was going to use this. So can we do CRUD on X? Yep. Can we do CRUD on Y? Yep. Can we do CRUD on Z? Yep. Big green check. And then you put
Yeah.
it in front of a user, and they're like, well, this is kind of difficult and frustrating.
Yeah. I can
Well,
do it, but it's terrible.
right. And sometimes we didn't have a good spec up front. And I think that would apply also in Jack Spirko is a permaculturist, and he runs the Survival podcast, and he talks about type 1 errors in permaculture. And it's planting the tree or siting the house in the wrong location. It's a really expensive thing to undo. And it's
Yeah.
one of those things that happens. It always happens early because somebody is too excited and they want to get
Yeah.
started.
Yeah.
Right. So that's yeah. We start big and we work our way down slowly.
Yeah. That's cool.
The other one would be integrate rather than segregate. And this is probably for you and I, this is us just being like, yeah, that's how everyone should be, because that's how we
Obviously.
are. But right.
Yeah.
Full stack thinking, cross-functional teams, like design sitting with engineering. And this is like the Living Social thing. And I'll give more detail in the talk, but at Living Social, design was separate from engineering. And there was a great design team and it was a great engineering team, but there was always these big handoffs that had to happen, right? And when I took over doing internal tools design, I had come in through InfoEther as a front end developer, and so I stayed in engineering, reported through engineering, and it was myself and Lynn Wallenstein and two other individuals, and we built and designed sitting right next to the engineers. Much different experience, much different output, right?
Yeah.
And so they both can work, but I am a big fan of everybody integrated, working closely together. More pod focused, less transoms to throw things over.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think we see, it seems like there's even more of a push for that nowadays. As teams get smaller, more cross functionality, more generalists, it seems like there's more of a need for that than ever.
For sure.
So this may be kind of a personal question. It's been my observation that many people who find homesteading and permaculture in adulthood usually have some inciting incident that led them to sort of reevaluate their lives or decide to pursue a different course. Have you always been interested in these topics, or was there something that caused you to seek this out?
Well, I loved the gardening. My dad grew a garden when I was a kid, and I remember vividly the smells of the fresh green beans and the carrots and the taste. Like there's something about that super fresh vegetable coming out of the garden that you just can't replicate. And my grandfather, my dad was originally from California, and so we go visit my grandpa. He retired to a farm, and he had sheep, and then he had walnuts. And so I didn't have to work the farm. Anytime I went, it was just a party, and we had fun, and we got to play with. And so all my cousins had to work the farm, and they were like, "Oh God,"
Yeah,
But
they hated it.
For me, it was like, "Oh, this is great. I love it." And I don't know. Maybe I would have been less likely to have been like, "I'm all in," if I would have had done more work on the farm. But I know.
But you did have it in your blood. It sounds like
I did, but I think like for me, the probably 2007, 8. I like Hurricane Katrina, seeing that nobody's coming for you, and you have to take care of yourself. One, and then in 2008, the person I was dating passed away unexpectedly from a brain aneurysm. That was definitely kind of like let's turn your world upside down. And so all of those things kind of like that was really where I started to be like. Because I was doing a garden on my balcony in Arlington, and that's cool. But I was like, I want to go out. Yeah. And so I went out. My boss had a place out in Leesburg I rented for a while that was out in the middle of nowhere, backed up to a nature preserve. And I was like, this is it. I love this. Right. So definitely was when I met my wife and we got married, I was like, can we go? No, okay. Yeah. Can we go? Okay, not yet. And then she's like, I got a job working from home. I'm like, can we go? She's like, yes, okay, all right, fine. Here's your circle to look in, right? And so there is a mentality of like, this is choosing a different life, right? Like I'm not going to be in a city. I'm giving things up. I'm giving up opportunities. But there's a lot to gain from it as well. And so, we've been, we were able, like in COVID, we were able to homeschool our kids and the kids could just go out and play because we have 15 acres. So it was like, just go out, go do something. Just don't leave the property. Yeah. So it's there is some different kind of outcomes that were very beneficial. And you can only see in hindsight looking back like, oh, I'm kind of glad we were here at that point. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. It does set a different direction for you, the outcomes you'd have in life, what you have for your kids, even potentially like the health benefits of like eating your own food and so many pieces of that I think are really interesting. I hope you don't mind me, and thank you for indulging me on that. I just noticed that so many people have very personal reasons for why they got into permaculture, homesteading, that sort of thing. So that's cool.
Yeah, and it's fun. I mean, like you don't think about. I was never a morning person, and when you got to go out and milk the cow. And it's still pitch black outside and you're like you got a headlamp on and it's 40 degrees or 30 degrees. It's like I signed up for this. I chose this. Okay. But
apparently you keep picking
the fresh milk and it's like you're making your own butter and then it's like okay, this is pretty cool. So
that's right.
There's moments, but there's moments where you're just like why what did I do? What did I do? Yeah. And then there's other moments where you're like, this is what I did. And
this is it.
2 thumbs up. Right.
That's cool. John, thanks so much. I'm really excited to see your talk. You're going to be kicking us off on Thursday, the first day of the conference.
Awesome.
So thank you for that. Really excited to hang out with you and see you there. Look forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you. See you all in a couple weeks.
Yeah, not too long.
Not too long.